A good floor plan makes building easier. It's the core way homeowners, clients, builders, and others communicate. And I know that it sounds crazy, but a floor plan is not even what most people think. Whether you're a homeowner, architecture student, or junior interior designer, by the end of this video you will understand what a floor plan really is, how to build a clear hierarchy, how to use hatches, annotations, and layers so your plans are both beautiful and readable. I will demonstrate all the principles inside Synapse.app. You might have heard of other tools or have used them like AutoCAD or Revit, and honestly I've tried over 15 tools, but nothing compares to this. It is free to get started, it is on the web, so you do not need to download anything, and you can use it even in a 30-year-old computer. So you can follow along by starting for free and clicking the first link in the description. So let's start with the most important idea. A floor plan is not a view from above, it's a section. A slice through a building, which is usually taken at about 1.2 meters height or 4 feet above the finished floor. Imagine holding a giant blade and slicing through the building horizontally at that height. Everything that the cut passes through becomes a primary information in the drawing. So when I draw a floor plan, I'm always thinking in 3 categories. What's being cut by the plane? These are the elements you see in sections like walls, columns, sometimes even built-in furniture. What's below the cut? Like floor finishes, other types of furniture, appliances. And finally, what's above the cut? So overhead cabinets, remaining stairs, or even beams. So why does that matter? Because the things that are cut are physically closer to you in this imaginary view, should be the most visible. These should be the heaviest line weights and have the darkest fills. And everything else should support that story. If your plans feel noisy or hard to read, it's often because the hierarchy isn't clear. So we'll build everything else on top of that idea. Most floor plans don't actually need more lines. They just need to assign importance to the lines that you already have. This is done with line hierarchy. I keep 3 main levels and separate them in 3 different layers. The first ones are the heavy lines. These are the lines that are cut. These lines are the thickest lines in the whole drawing of the floor plan. These would be the outlines of walls, columns, structural cores, and everything that the cut plane passes through. Next are the medium lines. I use the medium line weights for things that interact with the walls and the circulation, so this would be doors and windows, stairs as well, and these are the elements that are not being cut in the same way as walls, but they're critical for understanding how you move through the space. So they stand out more than furniture, but less than the walls themselves. And third, the light lines. I reserve the light line weights for furniture, for appliances, for plumbing fixtures, or even floor patterns. These are important, but they're not the primary structure. They support understanding how the room is used, but should never overpower the basic geometry of the plan. When you put these 3 layers of hierarchy together, something nice happens. The walls are the actual anchor of the drawing. The opening and stairs show movement. The furniture and fixtures explain how life fits into those spaces. And the actual plan becomes readable from across the table before anyone has read a single note. And in Synapse, I basically make this about giving every single element a distinct line weight, and honestly, just sticking to that system religiously for every single project. If line weights give you hierarchy, hatches give you depth and materiality. In architectural drawings, hatches are patterns that help you identify materials, distinguish cut elements from surfaces, and add subtle depth without clutter. Here's how I actually use them in a floor plan. Anything that the cut plane slices through, typically a wall, this I usually fill it with a solid fill. This means that the walls read as solid, structural, and heavy. It's another cue to your eye. This means that these are things you cannot walk through. 2. Materials which are subtle and not noisy. I usually use lighter, more open hatches to distinguish tiles versus timber flooring, exterior paving and interior surfaces, maybe even a different hatch for wet areas like bathrooms. Sometimes even use a screened or lighter hatch to show things beyond the cut. These would be overhead cabinets, upper floor elements, or even elements above the cut that matter but shouldn't dominate, like I guess remaining stairs, which take you to the next floors. And there's also another very key thing to remember, that the hatches are there to support and never to compete with line work, especially the walls and openings. Once the geometry, line weights, and hatches are set, then I start layering in annotations and dimensions. Basically, here's a few rules that I follow. All text used should use one simple to read font. Basically, any sans serif font would work. Try to avoid any kind of hand-looking written typography because that just makes it a lot harder to read. Also, make sure that you align notes to some sort of invisible grid. This makes sure that the drawing doesn't feel like chaotic, and also allows the eye to go from element to element a lot easier, basically guiding your eye easier without having to search for the next annotations. And also keep in mind that the distance between the dimension lines should be consistent. Think of annotations as the interface between what you're thinking and the builder's reality, in the sense that the builder shouldn't have to guess what you meant by this line or that line. And all of these should clarify, complement each other, and not compete between each other. Even though we went through these principles, before you actually go and draw your floor plan, I just want to go through some of the common mistakes that I see that I did as a beginner, and most likely you will do as you go on, so keep these in mind. So the first one is that all the lines have the same weight. Once again, when everything looks identical, nothing will stand out. The walls will look like furniture, the furniture will look like structure, doors will disappear into the background, and everything else. In this instance, please always go back to the section where I talked about hierarchy and apply those principles. Give the cut to the heaviest lines, give openings the medium lines, and everything else to the lightest line weight. Even without hatches or even a color, the plan will immediately become more readable. Mistake number 2 that I always see is that people overuse hatches. It is tempting to hatch everything: tile, wood, paving, cabinets, tile patterns, anything. But the result is that the drawing will fight for your attention. Try to hatch only where needed to separate different areas or zones. This should actually play a role and function, shouldn't act like a coloring book. Just use heavy fills on things that are cut and light to open hatches where material differences actually matter. The other mistake that you're most likely going to make is that there's going to be different and random text sizes, different fonts, misaligned notes, dimensions that might be stacked up upon each other. This is the fastest way to make a drawing feel unprofessional. So choose one clean font, keep sizes consistent, and align your notes to an invisible grid. Dimensions should sit outside the room whenever possible and have consistent spacing between them. This will create a calm and structured layout. And finally, I just want to end this by saying that you do not need to overthink this. As long as the floor plan is readable, it doesn't have to have like any crazy color palette. In fact, some of the best floor plans are monochrome, meaning that they are black and white. And a floor plan's goal is just to be easy to read and even easier to build from. So if you just want a more technical tutorial on how to actually use the tool Synapse throughout this video and how to actually utilize its artificial intelligence for your project, watch the video right here.